So, you see a real estate brochure claiming the average income in a new town is $129,400. Immediately, you're picturing mansions and luxury cars, right? Well, what if I told you that exact number could be mathematically perfect, but completely, totally deceptive? We're jumping straight into the fascinating and sometimes really tricky world of measuring the center of data. Okay, let's actually look at this real-life town scenario. That $129,400, it is the actual, mathematically correct average salary of a town with exactly 50 people. Naturally, your brain hears that number and paints a picture of a community where pretty much everyone is taking home six figures. But here's the massive catch. What if 49 of those 50 people actually only make $30,000 a year? And just one single person, let's say a tech billionaire with a mega compound on the edge of town, makes $5 million a year. Is that $129,400 average a lie? Mathematically, no way. But practically, it is incredibly misleading. So, by the end of this explainer, you are going to deeply understand the core measures of center, the formulas behind them, and exactly which one to trust in the real world so you never get tricked by data again. Let's do it. Section 1. The Toolkit. Calculating the mean. To solve our town's salary problem, we really need to build our statistical toolkit, starting with the absolute most famous tool of all, the mean. Now, the mean is what most people just casually call the average. Think of it as an equal share balancing act. You simply add all your data values together and then divide by the total number of values. Super simple, right? Now, there are two key symbols you've got to know here. If you're measuring the entire population, use the Greek letter mu. It kind of looks like a little U with a tail in the front. But if you're just taking a sample, a smaller, random group, you use an X with a little line over it. We pronounce that X bar. And listen, that sample mean, X bar, is a fantastic tool to estimate the actual population mean, mu, as long as your sample is truly random. Now, you might be sitting there asking, wait, what if the values in my dataset repeat a lot? Do I really have to punch 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 into my calculator all day? No, definitely not. You can take a massive shortcut. Just multiply each distinct value by its frequency, how many times it shows up, add those products together, and then divide by your total number of data values. So if the number 4 shows up 5 times, just do 4 times 5 to get 20 and add that to your sum. It's literally the exact same math, just way, way faster. Section 2, the toolkit, finding the median. Okay, now that we've got the mean down, let's add the second tool to our belt, the median. I like to think of the median as the middle child of your data. It's the number that cuts your data line exactly in half. Finding it requires a little bit of procedure, so let's walk through it together. Step 1, and please do not skip this because students do it all the time, you absolutely must order your data from smallest to largest. If you don't sort it first, picking the middle means literally nothing. Step 2, you calculate the location of the median using a really simple formula. N plus 1 divided by 2, and N is just your total number of data values. Then, step 3, you just count down your perfectly ordered list to find the values sitting right at that specific location. But wait, let's pause right here for a second. What happens if N, your total number of data points, is an even number, like 40? If you plug 40 into our formula, 40 plus 1 is 41. Divide that by 2, and you get 20.5. How on earth can you have a 20.5th number? Well, when your location lands on a decimal like this, it just means the median is trapped exactly between two numbers. So you grab the 20th value and the 21st value, add them together, and divide by 2. You're basically just finding the exact middle of those two middle numbers. So the absolutely crucial point is right here. The location of the median and the actual value of the median are not the same thing. Let me give you an example. A hospital administrator tracked the ages of 40 patients in the ER. Using our formula, the location of the median was 20.5. But when we actually looked at the ordered list of patient ages, the 20th value was 24 years old, and the 21st value was also 24 years old. So the location is 20.5, but the actual median value, the median age, is 24. Never, ever confuse the map for the destination. Section 3, the face-off, mean versus median. All right, let's bring all this back to real life. Let's bring back our town of 50 people and see which measurement is actually better. This brilliantly illustrates why context is literally everything in statistics. Remember, 49 people earn $30,000, and one person earns $5 million. The mean, our arithmetic average, gets violently yanked all the way up to $129,400. It's heavily pulled by that $5 million outlier.
But look at the median. If we line up all 50 salaries from smallest to largest, those middle values, the 25th and 26th salaries, are both $30,000. The median sits completely unbothered at $30,000. When you have extreme values or outliers, the median is for sure a far better measure of the center because it actually reflects the reality of the middle.
Section 4. The toolkit, the mode.
We have a third tool in our box, and it's a quick one. The mode is simply the most frequent value in a data set. It's the popularity contest winner. For example, if we look at 20 statistics exam scores, and the score 72 shows up 5 times, and no other score shows up that often, boom, 72 is your mode. It's just whatever happens the most. Now, what's really cool is the mode's incredible flexibility. Unlike the mean and median, which totally require numbers, the mode can be bimodal, meaning a dataset can actually have 2 modes if 2 values tie for the top spot. But even more surprisingly, the mode works for qualitative data too. If you have a bag of marbles and you count red, 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 green, blue, your mode is red. You obviously can't calculate an average of colors, but you can always find the mode.
Section 5. Advanced application, grouped frequency tables.
All right, let's step it up a notch. The real world rarely gives us a neat, ordered list of individual numbers. Often, data comes grouped together. Like you might see a survey that says 10 people are between the ages of 20 and 30, but it doesn't give you their exact ages. If we don't know the individual data values, only the intervals and frequencies, how on earth are we supposed to calculate a mean? Well, we can't find an exact mean, but we can put on our detective hats and estimate it beautifully.
Let's look at a real-world example. Professor Blount's statistics test. We only know that 4 students scored somewhere between 62.5 and 68.5, and another 4 scored between 68.5 and 74.5. Since we don't have the exact grades, we make a compromise. We find the midpoint of each interval. To do that, you just average the lower and upper boundaries. So for that first interval, 62.5 plus 68.5 divided by 2 gives us a midpoint of 65.5. We just pretend, for the sake of the math, that all 4 students in that group got exactly a 65.5.
Once we have all our midpoints figured out, we use this modified formula right here. Estimated mean equals the sum of the frequency times the midpoint, divided by the sum of the frequencies. Let's break that down step by step. You multiply the number of students in a group, that's the frequency, f, by that group's midpoint, m. You do that for every single interval. Then you add all those products together. Finally, you divide that massive number by the total number of students who took the test.
And when we crunch those numbers for all of Professor Blount's intervals, we arrive at 76.86. That is our absolute best estimate of the class mean. It takes a little extra legwork, sure, but it allows us to unlock the center of the data, even when the individual puzzle pieces are completely hidden from us.
Section 6. Wrapping up the law of large numbers. Before we wrap up our lecture today, let's zoom out and summarize a huge statistical principle. Why do we care so much about taking samples to find these means anyway? Well, it all comes down to the law of large numbers. This law states that as your sample size gets larger and larger, the sample mean, our x-bar, is highly likely to get closer and closer to the actual population mean, our mu. This is literally the foundation of sampling distributions. If you ask 10 people how many movies they watched last week, your mean might be way, way off. But if you ask 10,000 people or 300 million people, your distribution tightens right up and your statistic becomes an incredibly accurate mirror of reality. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to test your brand new toolkit. If a weight loss program loudly advertises on TV a mean weight loss of 6 pounds, but the mode of their data is actually only 2 pounds? What are they hiding? Think about our town salaries. It means a few extreme outliers, maybe people who lost 50 pounds, are drastically dragging that mean upward, while the vast majority of people, the mode, are really only losing 2 pounds.